Is there any industries that you like to work best with, or is there any type of NIAX or industries that really call your attention more?
I like professional services industries. Of course, being up here in Northwest Ohio, we have a fair amount of manufacturing, healthcare, and banking as well. So I'm getting exposure to those sectors, which is great.
Shout out to Ohio because we love it. We love the people out there. Actually, labor force, very well versed in certain industries. Why? Because they've been exposed through generations to certain industries, and they can come in and help us a lot with what we're seeing when it comes to reshoring, nearshoring. Businesses right now have the ability to actually look at what they spend, their supply chains, and say, hey, maybe we need to buy a company now that the government, the programs that we have through government, SBA and other things that can help us now acquire those businesses because they want us to basically bring back a lot of that production here, onshoring here in the US. Is that conversations that come up with clients, Bill?
Yeah, and it's as much a piece of economic necessity as it is an opportunity to better integrate the supply chains with what companies are doing. It gives companies more control over their resourcing and their inventories. It's tremendously important, especially in the manufacturing sector, but we're also seeing this in service companies too. There's been a profound movement towards onshoring customer service, for example.
Business Money Podcast. 1, 2, 3, Business Money Podcast Fearless. Business Money Podcast Fearless. Business Money Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Money Podcast, where intelligent financing meets strategic thinking. And strategic thinking is what we're going to need now in this new economy, this new opportunity for what? For being strategic about how to manage our businesses, how to do startups, how to expand them, how you as a CEO or a founder of a company need to consider growing your company. So we're very excited today to talk to Bill Sodeman, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what he does and how he helps entrepreneurs, businesses, C-level executives really, of course, grow and expand their businesses. Bill, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am better than I deserve, as Dave Ramsey will say, but just don't tell him, all right? So I am blessed. I'm happy, basically, with everything that is happening in regards to our businesses and everything. Why? Because it took us sit down, really strategize with our teams, anything basically with our organizations and our businesses, but it's about really having coaching and people around us that can help us strategize everything that we need to make sure that we achieve. So Bill, I'm very excited to talk to you about what you do and how you're helping businesses and entrepreneurs. But do you mind if I just give a brief introduction about who you are and what you do?
Go ahead.
Absolutely. So Bill has served a number of leadership roles during his 30-year plus career in .coms. All right. So we know that you're in the technology sector, of course, nonprofits and higher education. Very interesting because they are different industries, of course. And he has led systems, acquisitions, and implementation projects for leadership development programs and large-scale training initiatives. Now, if I am the founder, the CEO, the CFO of a company or something, I want to know basically how you do this. How do you integrate all of these really strategies to be able to manage the leadership roles? So, Bill, can you please expand and tell us a little bit about your journey?
Thanks. I earned my doctorate and my MBA right out of undergraduate. And I've continued to be a professor all of my career. In fact, I'm teaching some courses this fall on information systems. But part of my journey is every few years in academia, I would go out into industry. And that's where I picked up a couple of C-level roles, first as a chief information officer and then as a chief learning officer. I found that being in the workforce helped keep me sharp and relevant, not only in the classroom, but in my career of adult education and training, both in the corporate and higher education sectors.
Very interesting. So you think that you have a love to teach, and that's why you're so good at really growing organizations? Is that maybe interrelated?
And first, it was a love for teaching. And then over time, I found myself acting as a mentor and a coach more and more. I would always tell my students that, I need to learn as much from them as they do for me for this journey to work. I never thought of myself as what we call the sage on the stage, where I had all the wisdom, because I've worked with a lot of working professionals in my graduate courses. They bring plenty to the table, and it's always a privilege to work with them, no matter if they're a student or a coaching client.
Wow, very amazing. Actually, that is a trait of personality that I find in a lot of very successful founders and leaders that really have grown organizations. It's just knowing that the information doesn't only come from them, but it's really a synergy of a thinking tank or ideas of everybody involved, but all focus on a mission. What are the biggest problems that a business owner or a CEO or C-level executive is finding right now to grow an organization at this point?
It's strategy. My PhD's in strategy, and that's the foundation of my teaching and my coaching businesses. What I'm finding more and more is that executives are trying to manage issues instead of looking towards the long term. And with publicly held companies, the pressure is on every quarter to show earnings and results, but the long term is more than a quarter. It can be several years. And right now, it's a great example with artificial intelligence. It's just messing up a lot of companies' strategic visions that they've carefully built over the last few years. In a case of Me Too, we've got artificial intelligence now, or we're using AI, but companies are using it and they're not quite sure where they're going, which is worrying. I've seen this in the .com era with Web 2.0, even all the way back to the introduction of the PC into the workforce. We weren't quite sure what we were doing with these technologies, but it became pretty clear that we would actually need more people in organizations, not fewer people. So, that's part of my thinking with how I advise clients and organizations is block out the time and really work every week on matching your strategy to what you're actually doing in operations and tactics.
Wow, that is amazing. I completely agree 100% on what you're saying. I think that the expectations and reality really of the world that we live in is, well, first of all, a lot of companies right now are seeing evaluations of course, growth tremendously on their evaluations. But I don't think we're taking in account that we are still going to need people to be able to execute a lot of these operations. People. In the end, the businesses are not done between machines, they're done between people. So if we're impacting organizations and organizations have people, we still need people to have a business, basically acumen into these tools. So if you were to tell someone right now that is actually coming and saying, I want to grow and I want to expand my business, you are not advising them to just basically rely completely on AI, right? You're advising them to rely on people. Am I wrong in saying that?
You're not wrong at all. We not only need what we call humans in the loop in the AI world, we need people to interpret and information and execute decisions. These are things that machines just aren't ready to do and may never be ready to do because computers don't understand politics. They may not understand context, and they certainly don't understand emotional intelligence and relationships.
Talk about customer service. Think about, like, really right now, the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to probably put a human touch into a sea of businesses being done in AI. We see it even with the tools. People are getting already kind of like tired of AI bot and all that. One of the things about your area of expertise on leadership, and I see that you work for nonprofit organizations and you are in a board. Why did you take interest in this or in these organizations in particular?
I've worked for nonprofits in one area or another for most of my career. And I see nonprofit organizations as essential not only for the economy, but for developing the workforce. Some of the most innovative organizations I've seen have been nonprofits. So it's always a privilege to not only work for a nonprofit as a manager or a client, but to be on a board. It gives me insight not only into strategy, but into how these organizations help support society as a whole and our communities.
I think those nonprofit organizations, especially if they are driven, let's say, in a sector that you have love and of course empathy for, they're embedded into those groups. I'm part of a couple of organizations on the business side in Spanish and English, both, because actually I have the ability to be in both. And I understand the pain points of the Hispanic, let's say, population on the business side as well as in the American side, and how we need to use tools to be able to empower, especially the young generation right now. You talk about labor force, you talk about people that are coming in, and well, that's what we need to do. We need to incubate either entrepreneurship or the labor force that are going to help our entrepreneurs to continue to succeed, of course, for the well-being of the United States. So how can you tell me a little bit about what is your methodology to help a business owner or let's say a CEO or a C-level executive to help them grow the business?
I try to pick areas that are not only capable of, quick action, but will create quick, long-term and short-term change. One area I like to look at right away is the schedule. And this goes back to what we were talking about with strategy earlier, trying to determine how much time per week my client is working on strategy versus how much time they're supervising operations or being a manager. There's three perspectives in time that are important here. Strategy is about the long term. Management is for the present. But operations often it goes from the present back into the past, and operations often involves fixing problems, firefighting, as we mentioned earlier. And the more a manager or executive is firefighting, the less time they've got for the important tasks of management and strategic vision.
With the leadership team, to understand how they're using their day. Because if they are using their day a lot to put out fires, that means that maybe there's something that is failing. It's usually a cause and effect situation or a lack of maybe foreseeing that problem and planning for and having already a strategic plan to take care of it where you don't have to spend a lot of time. What is the plan if that happens? Do we have another vehicle that can take that workload or several vehicles that can take on those routes? But that only comes from understanding where are the pain points. I always ask, what are the pain points right now? Nobody has ever basically told me that they don't need capital. Everybody, 185%, and my numbers might be skewed there, but 185% of the people that have businesses, they ask me for capital. I never tell them, hey, you want capital? And they say, no, I'm good. I have all the money I need. No, but it's like, okay, if you have this money, what would you use it at? How would you do that allocation of capital? So after you look at the schedule, what other areas do you kind of have the conversation with the client to see how you can better the company? What is the next steps?
I take an approach that gets the individual to look at their emotional intelligence. How do they work under regular conditions and how do they work under stress? Because that's going to affect how my client works with his teammates, his peers, and his direct reports to, affect change. That's really the next step is how is the client being an effective implementer of change and building value within their immediate organization and the company as a whole.
We all have different personalities. Actually, I will say this because even though I'm a person now, I used to be a person before. But I think it was when I was more reactionary, I would get a lot more, let's say, volatile or a little bit angrier. But it was like not being prepared mentally for those things happen. Doing a SWOT analysis on the situation. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. And, it's important to remember our role as, not only as authority figures in the organization, but as teammates and peers. We're there to help not only guide the organization, but to help it live out its mission and values, which is another part of what I do with clients. I help them match their personal mission and values with what their organization's doing.
I love that because that's actually something I believe in. You should be doing things that align with your life's purpose and mission. If the companies that you own, okay, so we get that. Once you understand that, how do you help amplify that? What are the next steps?
Great question. Once we have that personal strategic plan, then we can lay out a custom set of coaching modules, as I call them, and every client gets their own custom build. I'm not a cookie cutter coach. I've got a wide variety of exercises, worksheets, and frameworks to choose from to help fit the coaching engagement to the client's needs. And, they may need work on communication or leadership, or they may need some development on teamwork, for example. And those are all areas where I'm well suited to provide value.
In the strategy side, you have to be versed in several areas. It's the same as a business owner, because if you think about how a business owner, where do they have to be? Depending on the 5 stages that your business is at. If you're in a startup, well, you're basically getting the gears going of the business. Then you get to early stage. Then you get to mid stage. Then you get to maturity. That's where you have C-level executives, where you're basically either preparing for sale of the business because it's going to be integrated horizontally or vertically. In every area, you're going to have to focus more on certain, let's say, divisions or parts of the business. If it's financial planning and budgeting, marketing, legal, well, guess what? If you're a business owner, you're going to have to learn a little bit about legal, right? You're going to have to learn a little bit about financial planning and budgeting, all of those things. So each area, especially where the pain points and maybe the weaknesses are, that's where you need to focus on. So you help them with this. You help them create a tailored suit that really helps the company expand.
Yes. Yeah. And that's definitely one of the goals with any of my coaching engagements, is to not only help my client as a professional, but to help them scale and grow their business or their organizational unit.
So one of the things I find, especially about professionals like you, is that you understand that you need to look at data to be able to assessments, right? And we believe in the same thing, right? Because it's like what you cannot measure, you cannot identify and fix. So what is one of the things that you like to analyze in a business currently when you're working with the business owner?
I think one thing that comes up more often is, what are the driving forces that propel the company forward? Is the company based on natural resources, intellectual property, or is it a case where they're dominant within a specific market? And I think sometimes executives lose track of that.
Well, the reason why I ask is because we talk a lot about supply chain and about interruptions. And I mean, we've seen this since COVID, of course, like that really put a flashlight into the situation. And then a lot of companies, I used to talk to companies before and say, oh, I get my steel from a local retailer or somebody that imported it, let's say from any country or whatever. And it's fine. Then it was, okay, now it's from Vietnam. Okay, now we're looking, because like it's changing basically prices and everything, those type of commodities. Now you have people right now evaluating where from A to Z, where everything that makes the business really comes from. So even the IP, what you just mentioned, what are the driving forces of the value of the business? IP, intellectual property. The value of a business is not only going to be, let's say, on the people, but it's also on the SOPs with the IP integrated all together, and the executions, and then the contracts. We talk about private contracts, government contracts, whatever it is that really is tied into that is it's what brings the value up of a business. A lot of times we look at asset-based lending or whatever, like, I mean, the client wants to buy or acquire for growing a business, but it's not only that, it's also what technology is going to be leading the valuation of the business to grow. We see it with changes in SBA. We see it with changes where capital is flowing. Where is it directed? Technology companies have had a hard time sometimes acquiring capital because, well, most capital valuations have been done, let's say in the case of assets. So it's like, okay, what can I touch that tells me that this business is this? We've seen these challenges already for years, but now they're even more highlighted. So I don't think that a business can function right now if you don't have a good organization and you don't have a good strategy. The growth execution, and this is probably because you believe in serving with the International Veterinarian Organization, go and you give back. You go and you give back in your work, in the support of basically the mission. But the businesses are going to have to decide now, how can we support more let's say, the success of the company, share revenue strategies we can use to be able to incentivize businesses to grow. A lot of the businesses that have been doing really well because their customer service, their product continues to succeed more than the other, they give back to the locations, company, individuals that have helped the brand serve and continue to grow. Is that something you've seen, Bill, or have you had these conversations with any of the clients?
I've had this conversation with clients before, and it's always revelatory when I do have the opportunity to have these conversations because and I'll go back to some of my background. This is one of the reasons I've boomeranged from higher ed into the private and public sector through my career. It just not only keeps me relevant, but I think my perspective helps clients and organizations keep themselves more relevant.
I think that the experience of dealing with different industries that really called your attention more.
I like professional services industries. That's where most of my experience has been as an educator and an executive. Of course, being up here in Northwest Ohio, we have a fair amount of manufacturing, healthcare, and banking as well. So I'm getting exposure to those sectors, which is great.
Shout out to Ohio because we love it and we love the people out there. By the way, you're experiencing beautiful weather right now. I'm in Houston, Texas. So please feel sorry for me compared to you. All right. So the heat here is amazing and the humidity. I was there a couple of weeks ago. I think I told you, Bill. And the weather was fantastic. But what is also around it? A lot of good people, a lot of good, actually, labor force that are very well versed in certain industries. Why? Because again, they've been exposed through generations to certain industries and they can come in and help us a lot with what we're seeing when it comes to reshoring, nearshoring. Businesses right now have the ability to actually look at what they spend, their supply chains, and say, hey, maybe we need to buy a company now that the government and the programs that we have through government, SBA and other things that can help us now acquire those businesses because they want us to basically bring back a lot of that production here, onshoring here in the US. Is that conversations that come up with clients, Bill?
Yeah, and it's as much a piece of economic necessity as it is an opportunity to better integrate the supply chains with what companies are doing. It gives companies more control over their resourcing and their inventories. It's tremendously important, especially in the manufacturing sector, but we're also seeing this in service companies too. There's been a profound movement towards onshoring customer service, for example.
I'm an international guy. I believe that businesses is done everywhere in the world, but culturally, there is a way that we function, let's say in this case, in the United States. So we expect a certain level of, let's call it customer services, call it hospitality, call it, and maybe we're reevaluating those channels as well. And we're saying, yeah, maybe I'd rather have more of that group taking care of that here, using some technology, of course. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but been able to have people here. I was actually this morning with a group from Los Angeles that they flew in here to Houston, Texas. But what I see is we are more open to have these conversations now with companies that are here in the United States than with companies that are outside. I see it because I get the calls from everywhere from the Philippines all the way to Central South America has been also growing a lot of the VA sector, virtual assistants and maybe BPOs, things like that. Now we're like, no, it's more here. Does that what you see, Bill?
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing the same thing. And it's not going away. And I think the trend's going to continue no matter what the changes in politics in this country will bring.
Well, again, I think we're highlighting a lot of the problems that we saw before that maybe we just overlooked, but now there's no overlooking. I think that the companies that are going to win are the ones that have the value commitment from the whole company to make sure that you give an experience of hospitality and quality that is above. I happen to be old enough to be able to remember that everything that I perceive as quality was made in the United States. And not just talking about products, but services. It has to be American because it's the best. I come from another country. I'm from Colombia originally. And as much as I love Colombia, I knew that the quality of products at that time and the services came from here. So I have that appreciation maybe because of the timeline. So I wonder, do you think that that's how we're going to win now in this new economy as business owners and entrepreneurs and CEOs?
Yeah. I think customers want genuine relationships with organizations and companies. Customers don't want to be treated like gears in the transaction. And, this move that I've been seeing towards AI agents and chatbots to do customer service, for example, is no substitute for having somebody be kind and ask how you're doing, or expressing gratitude and saying, thank you for being a customer, or thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Bill, absolutely. I think that's the key. I think it's going to be hard work and it's not going to be easy. But in the end, that's what's going to take us back. And I think, honestly, with the United States, that's the beauty of this country. This country actually can adapt a lot faster than even other countries about changes, because I've seen it in other countries where they're just so slow gearing. Here, we're a lot more agile when it comes to challenges and opportunities. I want to respect your time, Bill. I know you're a busy man with a full life, but I want to ask you if there's any final message of a call to action or something that you would like our viewers to know about what's going on in your world and what you do.
Check out my website at n3ed.com. I not only have my own podcast, The Perfect Route, I'm also launching an online community for business owners and not only aspiring, but current executives, so that they can find out more about my services and connect with other people.
Fantastic. I love it. And we're going to check out your podcast. We really appreciate that you shared this time with us as well here. Also, if you like this information and you want to know more about this, tell us a little bit more about stories, strategies, things that are happening. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and of course, follow us in all of our social media. And of course, Bill, n3ed.com. Do you have an email or something that you want people to kind of contact you directly?
At Bill at n3ed.com is a great email. There's also a book a call link so that you can book a 10-minute call with me.
Perfect. I really appreciate your work, Bill. Thank you so much for being with us today. And of course, we're going to see you in the next podcast.
Thank you.